So this is going to be a kind of a rant video about how the token system works in Space Marine 2. And for those who aren't too aware of what token system mean, essentially you can think of it as like a slot system in which whenever an enemy performs an attack, they have to take up a slot, and there's a maximum amount of slot that the enemies can occupy. So in that sense, it's to limit the amount of enemies that can attack simultaneously against the player, which essentially is a safeguard against being frame trapped. For those who are not aware what frame trap means, it simply means that you cannot get any actions off whenever you get hit or whenever you're in a recovery animation. And it feeds a lot into the frustration that a lot of players have been expressing about not just in Space Marine 2 but just in video games in general. So essentially we can see in these clips here, I have spawned a bunch of Venom Cannon snipers here, and because of the way the slot system works, or the token system works, whenever there's a sniper attacking, the rest of the enemies will not do anything. They will just kind of stand around. So judging by this clip, we know that Venom Cannon snipers have quite a bit of a they use a lot of token in the system. This is to make sure that you always have a way of escaping Venom Cannon rounds, and also to make sure that enemies aren't too oppressive. In this next clip we have here, we have a bunch of Devourers instead, and you can see whenever the Venom Cannon sniper is charging up, the Devourers will cease to shoot. This is again to make sure that the player is not too pressurized, it's not too pressured, so you actually have a way of getting around these enemies, get to cover and such, and also make an attack. It's kind of necessary in a game like Space Marine 2. In fact, it's actually kind of common in a lot of horde shooter games. In Dark Tide, it works the same way. Enemies don't all just clump up against you and start swinging. I don't know exactly how many enemies are allowed to make an attack against a player simultaneously, but you know it exists, and players can use this fact to make better plays against the AI. The problem in Space Marine 2, and here we're showing the Chaos clip, I think the biggest problem is that there is no grace period between each token being used. So in a case such as this, where the Rubric Marines are just constantly shooting the players, even though there may only be 2 or 3 enemies shooting at once, because there is no grace period between each enemy firing, practically you are seeing the entire platoon of Rubric Marines just shooting at you non-stop. And this is a legit problem because certain classes simply don't have ways to deal with this problem. And it's kind of ironic here that the Flamers, they can only have 2 enemies shooting at once. And comparatively, it's not as oppressive as the Rubric case. I guess it's because Flamers technically are melee units and not range units, so their attacks probably use up more token than the regular Rubric's Marines. But either way, this is still not easy by any stretch of the imagination. But it is definitely far more possible to handle, I suppose, than just the Rubrics with the bolters. In this next clip, we have the extremist enemies instead, and this time we have the Terminator with the power swords. Judging by just this one clip, you know that you can see that whenever an enemy is making melee attacks, everybody seems to just stop. But you can see here as well that that's not necessarily the case at all time. And if they're all shooting and no one's meleeing you, you might as well be fighting a platoon of Terminators here. Or I should say a platoon of Rubric Marines here. There is no grace period between each token being switched on and off, so they can just gun you down like that. Now this next clip we have the Reapers, Soul Reapers, Terminators, and these guys are, everybody know by this point that these guys are absolute menace in range and even up close too. But you can see here, only 2 of them are allowed to make attacks against the players simultaneously. But that doesn't really matter because, like I said, the problem, there is no grace between each enemy making attacks, so practically they might as well be just attacking you simultaneously, even though realistically that would still be a much worse situation than them taking turns to shoot at you. Here in this clip we can also observe a bit about their behaviors. You can see that Whenever the Terminators are making an attack, the rubrics will not. But as soon as the Terminators stop attacking, the rubric Marines will sneak in a few shots in between. I can understand making a token system in the horde shooters like this, but what I cannot is clearly not a lot of playtesting was performed when they're making siege mode, because otherwise they would know that this kind of situation is actually very common in siege mode. And here we have the worst case scenario, which is when you have triple terminus spawn. And let me tell you right now, triple terminus is probably not play tested at all, because terminus enemies do not obey by the rules of token system at all. You can see these guys are, if I don't have the invulnerability mode on, they would have absolutely killed me. And the Hellbrews are also a very infamous example of just why token systems should exist. These guys do not give a damn about taking turns. They're just going to lock you down with their plasma cannons or their hammer attack. I haven't seen this myself yet, but Neurothrope, if there's more than one Neurothrope, I don't think you can win at all, because as soon as they go into their sicko mode, their thunderstorm mode, you literally have no way of escaping. You're just forever frame trapped until you're dead. Granted, Neurothropes aren't as tanky. I just don't see how anybody is expected to win against this kind of BS. This final clips here, we have the triple lictors along with a bunch of warriors. This is a very common situation. I think a lot of solo players, true solo players, and probably siege players have ran into, where because the lictors have a lot of long combo attacks and a lot of counter attacks, they don't necessarily obey the rules of the token system, because technically their attack hasn't ended. And unlike the rubricates or the warriors, they cannot stop their attack once it starts. So you get this situation where, oh yeah, two of the attacks are parryable, and then the third one is completely impossible to avoid. So you just cannot get away from this kind of situation. Now, as to what kind of suggestion can be made, I think there should be some sort of, first of all, I think the biggest problem is that there is no grace period between the tokens being switched on and switched off. Obviously, I don't really know how the system works. We haven't really cracked the code of that yet. But judging from just our observation, you can see that the moment when an attack stops, another attack can take its place. And for certain factions or certain enemy compositions, it can lead to a very oppressive and very just oppressive and not very good, honestly, gameplay, where you're just kind of forced to run around and roll. I don't think that's what the developers wanted us to play this game. I don't think anybody finds this kind of playstyle fun or interesting, and if anything, it's only going to reinforce the current meta of using something such as the equipment spam or the heavy incinerator. Granted, I don't think every weapon should be able to handle this kind of situation, but when you have a situation where pretty much you can only use a certain setup to combat against, that's probably not very good from a gameplay design point. And I think the token system needs some work. I don't necessarily know how it should, but maybe some sort of grace system, so there's some cooldown between tokens being switched on and switched off, so it doesn't leave the player with absolutely no room to breathe. That would be a good start. And for terminus enemies, I think they should probably obey some sort of token system. I didn't test out the what it would look like when it's multiple terminus and multiple Majoris/extremis enemies, but I don't think it matters all that much, because when you have 3 counter-effects on the field together targeting one player, it's already kind of a dire situation. And whether these, I mean, if the extremists do join the fight, then yeah, it's really bad. It's not looking too well for the team, so to speak. But Terminus enemies absolutely need to obey the rule of the token system. Otherwise, you will get in the situation like when 3 Carnifexes just blast you with their range attacks, or the Hellbrute blasting you with the plasma cannon attacks. And that's my thought on the matter. I think ultimately Siege Mode was a very good addition to the game, but it also reveals some of the flaws that we have in Space Marine 2 fundamentally, and also just developers should probably play test their game a little bit too, because I just don't think anybody who play hard mode would tell you, yeah, oh yeah, Triple Terminus is really fun and fair. Granted, it's never going to be fair, but the tools we have against them, the Dreadnoughts, maybe the Marines too, they're not a foolproof way of defeating these kind of threats. And assuming that you're going to have a Dreadnought, which is a very big sink for your resource, considering that you need 1500 points, but the Dreadnoughts will often just get caught up by trash mobs instead of targeting the biggest targets. It's probably not. I think there's some balancing that needs to be performed, that's for sure. In any case, that's the end of the rant. Hopefully the developers reconsider their stance on the current balancing of the game, especially in Siege Mode, and hopefully make the game much better than it is now. And also fix the bugs, please.